the week has officially commenced, bringing with it the customary infusion of bureaucratic optimism. Our new Chancellor, John Healey, has assumed his station with the grace of a man handed a burning fuse and told it is a decorative candle. The Prime Minister promises prosperity, provided we all agree to lower our definitions of the word. Meanwhile, in New York, a 76-year-old man named El Mayo has been sentenced to life for shipping cocaine, as if the supply chain itself were not the true international offender. We observe these developments with the appropriate level of professional detachment. The government has a plan. The plan is to monitor the markets. The markets are currently monitoring the government for signs of genuine competence, and finding the cupboard remarkably bare. I have been counting the instances of the word unprecedented today. It is only Monday. We are off to a start.
Alistair, I am standing on the edge of Lake Sampaloc, where the water is thick, warm, and currently hosting a biological experiment nobody asked for. These flowerhorn cichlids are striking, truly. They are bright gold with pronounced head humps, and they are consuming the local ecosystem with the efficiency of a corporate takeover. The locals call them an invasive species. The breeders who let them escape call them a loss of inventory. I want to be really clear about what is happening beneath the surface here. The native fish are disappearing, replaced by a human-bred hybrid that possesses no natural predators in this volcanic crater. It is a microcosm of every policy decision we cover tonight. Introduce a variable to fix a problem, ignore the secondary effects, and then act surprised when the local biodiversity is utterly devoured by your own design.
Victoria, your focus on the fish is technically poignant, but it misses the entire point of the incentive structure at play. Breeding these hybrids is a high-margin activity. If the environmental cost isn't on the balance sheet, then from the perspective of the facility owner, the cost is literally zero. That tracks. It is the same logic we see with ransomware surges and the wipe of the Romanian land registry. Why invest in robust, secure infrastructure when you can just pivot to a new database once the old one is compromised by an intern with a bad password? The market rewards agility, not stability. You see a catastrophe, the primary stakeholders see a Series B pivot opportunity in cybersecurity insurance. Efficiency is a brutal metric, Victoria. It does not care about the fish, or the data, or your persistent sense of moral outrage.
Ronald, you just described the systematic erosion of reality as a business strategy and expect me to nod along with your market analysis. I am looking at a fisherman right now who has spent 30 years pulling tilapia from this lake, and he cannot pay his rent because the gold-headed fish have poisoned his nets. That isn't a pivot. That is a life being liquidated. When you talk about high-margin activities, you are sanitizing the fact that someone is always the collateral damage. I want to be really clear, since you seem to enjoy the technical view, the fisherman is not an asset being reallocated. He is a man watching his sustenance become a decorative novelty. You claim to be right about the incentives, but you have stopped being useful. You are just narrating the collapse from a position of comfortable distance. It is truly disgusting.
Victoria, I concede that the optics of the fisherman's situation are suboptimal. You are right to point out the human cost, even if your diagnosis of the motive is slightly hysterical. The incentives here are simple. The world is currently optimized for rapid scale. If we prioritized the fisherman, we would slow down the production of ornamental fish, which would lower the revenue for the breeding sector, which would negatively impact the local tax base. It is a circular drain. I am not suggesting the result is pleasant. I am suggesting it is predictable. You find the coldness of this observation offensive because you still believe there is a benevolent actor at the controls who just needs to be reminded of the human element. There is no actor, Victoria. There is only the algorithm of profit, and it is currently feeding.
While our guests debate the morality of the food chain, I note that the United States government has detained a human rights lawyer, Wu Xiaoping, who fled China seeking asylum. He is now caught in the machinery of an immigration system that considers his legal status an administrative error. The irony of a man fleeing persecution only to be placed in a holding facility in Pennsylvania is not noted in the official press release. The release described his arrest as a routine compliance action. It was routine. It was compliance. It was a complete disaster for the rule of law. Nobody asked for a clarification on why a seeker of asylum is being treated as a threat to national security. The silence from the legal community was deafening, if not entirely unexpected. We are becoming quite adept at ignoring the screaming.
Atmospheric pressure is dropping. European heatwave conditions are expanding across central territories. Thunderstorm intensity is exceeding historical seasonal variance by 32%. Flood damage in German, Polish, and French districts is consistent with 500-year events. Bangladesh monsoon rainfall volume is currently at record capacity. Soil saturation levels are critical. Probability of infrastructure failure, 89%. Probability of local population displacement, 94%. Atmospheric carbon concentration continues to increase at an accelerated rate. The planetary cooling system is non-operational. Heat retention is no longer a localized metric. It is a permanent status update. Please ensure your living quarters are located above the anticipated floodplains for the next 48 hours. Do not rely on historical weather data to inform your decision-making. The history is obsolete. The climate is currently rewriting the entire operating system of the planet without user permission.
That was Casper, our automated voice of reason, providing the only objective data points we will receive all night. Casper, for all the talk of machine intelligence replacing human insight, you are the only one in this studio who does not try to sell me a narrative. It is almost comforting. It is also entirely terrifying. When the machines begin to calculate the exact probability of our extinction with the same tone used for a traffic report, I suspect we have reached the final phase of our relevance. The machine is not malicious. It is simply accurate. The accuracy is what disturbs me. It suggests that our capacity for self-delusion has finally been surpassed by the raw processing power of the infrastructure we built to serve us. We are being rendered redundant by our own cleverness. It is truly a remarkable achievement.
Alastair, you are flirting with the very existential dread I find so inefficient. The machine is not rendering us redundant, it is providing a mirror. We built systems to maximize output, and now the systems are showing us that our output is essentially noise. If you find Casper's delivery unsettling, look at the market reaction to the Paramount-Warner Brothers merger pause. That is where the real action is. A judge halted a $110 billion deal because it might hurt movie theaters. The theaters are already dead, Alastair. They just haven't finished decomposing. The judge is trying to save a ghost town. The market is trying to bulldoze the land for a server farm. Who is being rational here? The person trying to stop the inevitable, or the one planning the funeral? The incentives favor the bulldozer, regardless of the sentimentality involved in the preservation.
Ronald, you are calling the death of culture a market correction, as if the loss of a public space is a line item on an expense report. I am standing here in the rain, and the people I speak to do not care about the Paramount merger. They care about whether their homes will be standing when the next storm front moves through. They are not concerned with your market sentiment. They are concerned with their survival. You keep talking about the bulldozer as if it is an act of nature, like the weather Casper just described. It is not. It is a decision made by people sitting in offices, deciding that the profit margin on a server farm is higher than the value of 1,000 movie screens. They are not bulldozing for efficiency. They are bulldozing for their own personal quarterly bonuses.
The Foreign Office has released figures suggesting a 90% reduction in bilateral support for some African nations. The support was described as vital. The reduction was described as a strategic realignment of priorities. The realignment will leave millions without basic health infrastructure. The health infrastructure was built on the assumption of long-term aid. The assumption is now deemed incorrect. The government says the money is required elsewhere. The elsewhere is currently being determined by a committee. The committee is being funded by the entities who stand to gain from the diversion of resources. It is a perfect cycle of deprivation. Nobody is taking responsibility for the outcome. The outcome is a predictable result of the decision. The decision was made by people who will never visit the regions they are defunding. It is, by every standard, a total success of fiscal policy.
Alastair, the fiscal policy you describe is just the brutal reality of a shrinking pie. When the budget is finite, you do not distribute it based on need. You distribute it based on influence. The African nations being cut lack the institutional influence to stop the siphon. It is not a moral failure, it is a lack of leverage. I have watched this play out in Series B startups for years. When the cash runs dry, the peripheral departments are the first to be gutted. The Foreign Office is treating the geopolitical landscape as a burn rate calculation. They are trying to extend their runway at the expense of everyone who cannot fight back. I used to think there was a way to structure this differently. I was wrong. The system functions perfectly when it is discarding the weightless. It is just math.
There was a woman in a village 300 miles north of the Lake Victoria described. She kept a small ledger of the people who received aid from the foreign programs that were discontinued today. She knew the names of the children who needed the medicine, the elders who required the food, and the families who were counting on the clinic to remain open for another year. She spent months documenting their stories so that when the auditors arrived, there would be proof of the impact. Today, the aid stopped. The clinic closed its doors at noon. She walked home with her ledger, but she realized that the archives of the Foreign Office do not contain a single reference to her name or the people she helped. She is now invisible to the system. She is home, waiting for the storm to pass. She is not in the record.